Hi, everyone. It's Kimbyrleigha, and this is Kimbyrleigha Live. If you're new here, I discuss current and ongoing true crime cases, break down legal aspects in a very easy to understand manner while I'm brushing up on my bar exam. And this just gives me an outlet as well because YouTube's a lonely job. So I love coming on and talking to all of you. And if you are new, it's nice to finally meet you. I heard that Sherry Papini has used that same line in her new documentary. I said it first. I also have a true crime channel here on YouTube, a main channel, and we're about to hit 500,000 subscribers. Thank you to all of you, and a podcast with my husband called Dark Livity. You can look below in the description box and check those out. Those are both narrative channels. I tell stories about true crime. They're not like this channel. This is a little bit different, but I have linked them for you in case that's your thing. A lot of people like to listen to those when they're having a day where they're, at home, just hanging out, they need to do laundry, they need to go to bed. I listen to trials and shows like this when I'm going to bed. But let me just say that today was a big day in court. But of course, Friday was also a big day in court. And right before I got on here, reason why I was late is because I was doing this bun in my hair. Kimber, why? Why did I wait till the last? It was literally counting down like 2 minutes, and I was flipping my head upside down to do this bun. But here we go. I wanted to throw my hair up because, truth be told, hasn't been washed in a few days. But mom life. I wanted to go ahead and make sure that I am breaking these cases down for you. And sometimes it takes me more than just the day I'm listening to it. So that's why I'm one day late. I might always be one day late. I keep saying this, but I'm trying to get to a point where I can do it the same day, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. Also, I have a big announcement. I listened, I delivered, and I have a new membership here called the Law Baddies because of all of you. I love it already. Now, before we get into everything, I just want to say one thing. I know I have a membership on my other channel. I have a Patreon. Don't worry. I'm going to work it all out. If you're a member over there, gladly, if you don't want to do that anymore, you want to be over here, vice versa, I'm not going to be offended. However, I am going to restructure that one so that I'm going to switch around some things and switch around some of the perks. And this one just has the one, level to just like hang out and be a member and call yourself out with the emojis and the loyalty badges and everything. So, anyway, I already love this chat we have, and we came up with this together. So, I'm excited about that. I'm excited about all the badges. I worked hard on them all day today. YouTube finalized them this afternoon because they have to check them. Okay. The pink briefcase, one of my favorites. We're going to have more. We're going to have more. We were only allowed to have 4 to begin with. And then as we grow, we can add more. So, let's get into day 24. Okay. We are 6 weeks. It's been 6 weeks. There's been 38 witnesses in total with the prosecution. The defense took center stage on Friday, launching their case, pushing back against the Commonwealth's narrative. And I polled you last chat, and it seemed like most of you believed that the Commonwealth did not prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. I would love to hear from you in the chat today because I was listening to some of the court today, and I was like, ooh, today was not a good day. Not a good day for the defense, in my opinion, but I only got through one witness, so you probably know. If you know, you know. But remember, the defense doesn't have to prove anything, but they will challenge all of the evidence that the Commonwealth has presented. But before we even got into the witnesses on Friday, the defense actually sought a dismissal of the entire case. This is routine, it's nothing new. At the close of the prosecution's case, Alan Jackson moved for a finding of not guilty on all charges, essentially asking the judge for a directed verdict of an acquittal. But he did, do his best to deliver this very good argument. He said that the prosecution had failed miserably to prove that Karen intentionally struck John O'Keefe and left him to die in the snow. And he emphasized to Judge Canoni that the Commonwealth had presented no direct evidence, no eyewitnesses, no video evidence, no audio evidence linking Karen's SUV to actually hitting John O'Keefe. And I thought it was a good argument. I really did. I mean, Courtney and I talked about it. I think maybe even Courtney thought it was a good argument. Not sure. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong. But of course, how would we have any of that evidence anyway, right? But he said that no reasonable jury could find Karen Reed guilty. And he insisted that this case never should have been brought in the first place. So I figured we would just play like a tiny portion of that. I also want to time myself because I want to get good at maybe ending this in an hour to an hour and a half, possibly every time. I know I want to go for like an hour, 2 hours and a half, but I'm trying my best because I do have a baby and my husband is the best, the best. So let's go to our first little scene here. Just want to play a couple minutes of both, to be fair. Let's try it out. Have everything set up this time, so it should work. And I tried to do my audio so that it matches because I noticed it too. I'm getting better and better. I'm getting a new system. I already got it. It's just taking me a long time to learn how to do it. I tried and I was too scared to do it today, but I'm going to fix the audio so that it matches. Doing my best. Wait, I don't even hear it right now. Do you? Oh, wait.
Wealth is simply not proven.
I don't hear it. Tell me if I'm just not hearing it.
Even in a light most favorable to them.
Oh my gosh, something always happens to me, I swear.
That there was a collision on January 29th.
Tell me if you hear that. I don't.
34 Fairview in Canton,
so I'm wondering if I messed something up.
There was no collision proven.
And don't worry if you can't afford to do something right now. I don't want anyone to feel like they have to do anything. Might have to call my husband in here because I'm not hearing anything. Hang on one second. I know this is weird, but it was just playing before. You do hear it? Oh, weird. I don't hear it for some reason. I wonder why. If I can't hear it, that's kind of a problem. Maybe my headphones messed up. Okay, tell me if you hear this.
Witness presented, there was no video evidence, no audio evidence, no evidence in the form of physical evidence at the scene by searches that were done by officers on the morning of January 29th, 2022. The Commonwealth, through suspect experts based on circumstantial technical data, only sought to prove a backing event, and that's important. They sought to prove that at 34 Fairview, the SUV went backward. They did not prove, and every single one of their experts was asked this question, they did not prove that there was actually a collision associated with that backing event. The Commonwealth experts said at best that the car went in reverse, and it was suspect whether it went in reverse at 34 Fairview or some other place, time, or date. The Commonwealth also put on an expert who said that she found no injuries, none, mind you, indicative of a vehicle strike on John O'Keefe's body. And she, Dr. Irini Scordi-Bello, was arguably their most important witness.
I can hear it now. I didn't have my volume up.
The Commonwealth cannot and did not say or prove a collision at a particular time, a collision at a particular place, a collision with a particular person, or that a collision even occurred on January 29th, 2022 at or around or at or after 12:30 in the morning.
Okay, that's all I wanted to play with that. Thank you for becoming members. Again, do not feel obligated to do anything, ever, ever. And by the way, there is something called gifting memberships. I will gift memberships. You can gift memberships. I believe I have gifting on. I will gift them to you. Don't worry. I don't want anybody to feel left out. So if somebody else feels like doing that one weekday, by all means. And if it's not on, let me know. I will make sure to turn gifting on. So that everyone can feel what it's like and if they even want to or whatever, and I will add more perks. But let's go to the next. Okay, we're going to now go to Hank Brennan. Of course, he made the rebuttal and he argued that any reasonable fact finder could conclude that Karen Reed was intoxicated. Remember last time when I talked about all that? And that there was a lot of evidence that pointed to a collision. There were multiple witnesses, he noted, that heard Karen and her statements on the morning that John O'Keefe was found. She's saying things like, I hit him, oh my God, I hit him. He said that 4 witnesses claimed to have heard Karen say this in the aftermath. And then he pointed to all the data we've heard about, the timeline, that when she put her Lexus in reverse at that very moment, that John O'Keefe's cell phone activity ended. That wasn't a coincidence. So let's hear him explain.
In a light most favorable to the Commonwealth, the first issue the court should look to is intoxication. The reasonable fact finder would find that the defendant was in fact intoxicated. Based on the serum conversion and based on Karen Reed's statements herself, you've heard many, many admissions by the defendant about her level of intoxication, which far surpassed the statutory mandate that she consumed alcohol in a way that would affect her ability to operate safely. Those are just two of the cornerstone pieces of intoxication which are clear, light most favorable to the Commonwealth, a reasonable fact finder could find beyond a reasonable doubt. The evidence of collision is abundant. I do not want to go through an entire closing argument or rhetoric, but suffice to say there are taillight fragments from the defendant's own Lexus from her shattered right taillight that are found in Mr. O'Keefe's clothes. Mr. O'Keefe is left at the very spot where she expects to find him, according to her statements, where her car does a backing maneuver at least 24 miles per hour. He is left with injuries on his arm consistent with the damage to her Lexus right rear taillight. The scientific data is substantial. Telestream data, Apple Healthcare data, battery temperature data. And again, Ms. Reed's statements herself about clipping, hitting. The evidence of a collision in this case is overwhelming. It is a public way. Lieutenant Gallagher told us about Fairview as being a public way. And so as to the operating under the influence of alcohol manslaughter, the conduct of driving in that forward and backing maneuver after being intoxicated meets clearly the standard for OUI manslaughter.
By the way, guys, my birthday's on Saturday. I wanted to go and do an entire court day with you, but it was on Saturday. So I'm like, oh, I can't do a court day for my birthday because I was going to do I was going to watch it with you. That's why I was trying to catch up because I'm like, this would be such a cool birthday present. I can watch with everyone. It's on a Saturday. I guess I could do Friday, but it doesn't feel the same. I know this isn't a surprise to most of you. The judge denied the defense's motion, which is not a surprise because these motions rarely get granted. And then finally, if we need some sound effects, like I know they have some on here, but I'll probably blow people's eardrums because I have not tested any of them. But there's a drum roll that needs to be there because finally on Friday, the defense got to call their first witness, right? It was on Friday. I'm not getting my days mixed up, right? But it was time. And the first person, I hope I don't say his name wrong, Matthew DeSogra. Matthew DeSogra. He was not an accident reconstructionist, but he was a forensics expert specializing in vehicle data, specifically the good old black box or the EDR, the event data recorder. He's here to analyze. He talked about the difference between the text stream and the Bosch system. Well, we talked about that last time. This was the physical device. That's what he's going to be talking about. That's what he's an expert in. He's the director of engineering at Delta V. This is a accident reconstruction firm. So not to say that he's not an accident reconstructionist, but his expertise is the data. His role was to dissect the Lexus's data logs, the same logs that the prosecution experts had used to say that they pinpointed Karen's movements on the night of January 29th. And he wanted to offer an alternate interpretation. He knows everything about infotainment, EDRs, GPS, and the advanced methods used to actually extract all of that data, even from heavily damaged or even non-functioning vehicles, which I thought was interesting. He holds not only a bachelor's, but also a master's degree in mechanical engineering. He's a licensed certified engineer, IPC certified. He said it was something like soldering. Interesting, right? And he was an active member of the Society of Automotive Engineers. And I think he said NAPARs. I'm not an expert in any of this, but he clearly is an expert in his field. I believe he said he was working for Delta V for 13 years. So I want to put him up on the screen. Sorry, I had Brennan up there. Clearly an expert though. But one of the biggest things that were at issue, as I'm sure you are aware if you're watching this trial, was this whole clock alignment. It makes my head spin. I was like, can we not talk about the clock alignment again? Most of this was about aligning the clock so they could figure out when this trigger event happened. And the second issue was, of course, when John O'Keefe locked his phone that night. Since I think this witness did a really great job explaining the science and the clock alignment, we're going to start there, and I'll let you hear some of that. And I'll also look at the comments, of course. Also, let me know if you can tell if the court is way louder than me and I'm softer or vice versa. I'm trying my best.
And are you also familiar with engaging in some sort of analysis that's referred to as clock alignment?
Yes.
What is clock alignment?
Clock alignment would mean that anytime we have a timestamp in any set of data, a singular clock value, it there's a good likelihood that that's not 100% accurate. So clock alignment would mean finding an independent source of time to compare that to, preferably one that's more reliable, and then making the necessary adjustments so that time can be considered real time.
How many cases have you been involved in that deal with clock alignment specifically?
Thousands, over 1,000. That's a regular part of data analysis. Any data set that has a timestamp, it's normal. It's part of the analysis. It's really the first step is let's get that clock aligned. So it's something I'm doing regularly.
And how long have you worked for Delta V?
It'll be my 13-year anniversary next month, actually.
Okay. These things that you've just described that we've talked about for the last few minutes, these are all duties that you perform within the rubric of your employment as the director of engineering at Delta V, correct?
Correct.
Now let's shift gears real quick and talk about your education, training, and background that qualifies you to perform these.
Okay, I'm not going to go through his background because we just did that, but he just explained. Clock alignment is essential. You have to be able to compare the vehicle timestamps to external events like phone usage, right? And we've been seeing that this whole entire trial. I think we become law baddie experts in that. I think we could be like, what did your clock say? What does my clock say? Let's watch when your clock turns and then when my clock turns, and then we'll just see how many seconds went between, and then we'll align the clocks. But to be real, I mean, he is qualified. If they're trying to qualify him as an expert, he's done thousands of these alignments. And then he was asked to review and analyze not just the other data that Burgess and Welcher brought forward, but also the methodology. Just remember that if you are catching up, how they conducted the research. Remember last time we talked about the scientific method? That's the thing. It's been argued that there has been confirmation bias, that the methods were not right, that they hadn't been peer reviewed and tested. So that was mainly why Mr. DeSogra was brought on. He was the one that was going to look through all of the research and findings from Burgess and Dr. Welcher, both from Aperture. And he was going to specifically analyze what's called the clock drift or the clock skew, kind of what I was just talking about, the difference in times on different clocks and the timing of the vehicle events and the phone events. That was essential. It's essential to understand everything in this entire case, right? So let's hear a little bit of that. I do have it on 1.25 because I feel like it just goes faster and then I explain.
Asked to do in this case. We asked to undertake a review of certain work performed by a person by the name of Shannon Burgess with Aperture LLC.
Yes.
Are you familiar with Aperture?
Yes.
Before you were asked to undertake that review, were you familiar with Aperture?
Yes.
Were you familiar specifically with Shannon Burgess?
Yes.
Were you asked to engage in any original analysis in this case?
All of my analysis is fundamentally based on all of the data and the numbers provided in the Aperture reports. So more or less the answer to your question is no.
So you were asked specifically to give the court and the jurors clarity on data that Shannon Burgess had analyzed and provided a report about, correct?
Correct.
And that dealt with data obtained from Ms. Reed's SUV, Karen Reed's SUV, correct?
Correct.
Did you, in fact, review Shannon Burgess's report summarizing his findings and conclusions regarding clock drift? That report was dated in January of 2025.
Yes.
And what did you do in that regard?
I analyzed the methods that Ms.
Yeah. As Marie said, she said, my clocks don't align, my phone, my coffee maker, my stove, and my microwave. It's like we would fail. We would fail. That's how my house is too. It's made me really look at all my clocks now. And I'm like, oh my, if something happens, I don't know what time it's happening out.
Mr. Burgess proposed for aligning the clocks in that report.
Were you also asked at some point to review Judson Welcher's report and PowerPoint presentation regarding the timing of the text stream event known as 1162-2?
Yes.
Did you determine whether Dr. Welcher had based his report on Shannon Burgess's analysis?
Yes.
Okay, so I think you kind of heard that, and we've kind of gone over this, and it's just a recap because the defense has to bring and refute all of these same points, right? So what he was saying is that he's going to have to verify the other witnesses' work. He's going to look at the way Burgess and Welcher conducted their research and findings, almost like a peer review. So Welcher, look, you finally get your peer review of your work after all. No, he's not going to be conducting independent research. He's going to be doing analysis of the output from Burgess and Welcher and making sure it makes sense. He's trying to make it make sense. And he was specifically, like I said, interested in the methods that Burgess specifically used to allegedly align the clocks in this case. Welcher's work was based off of Burgess's work. So that's why he said, you know, it's important to make sure Burgess's was correct or else everything would be skewed.
Were you also asked at some point to review Judson Welcher's report and PowerPoint presentation regarding the timing
I just said this.
of the text stream event known as 1162-2, 1162-2?
Yes.
Did you determine whether Dr. Welcher had based his report on Shannon Burgess's
Repeating the first part.
analysis?
Yes.
Before we get into that, I want to ask you a couple of questions about text stream events, so we're all talking sort of with the same vocabulary if we could. When I say text stream event, have you ever heard that called a trigger event?
Yes.
Are those sort of synonymous?
The event, in order to be generated, has to be triggered by something. So, yes.
You became aware in your analysis, I'm assuming, that Dr. Welcher reported a trigger event at a particular time or span of time, correct?
Correct.
What span of time was that? I should say, what time was that?
For which event?
For the 1162-2 event, sorry.
Do you mind if I reference the slide? Because I don't have the number committed.
With the court's
to my-
permission.
Go ahead.
Do you have a copy of it in front of you?
I do, Your Honor. So
Hi.
the original analysis places event 1162-2 ending at 12:31:43.
Okay. I'm just going back over this. He's looking at the timing of the text stream at the one labeled 1162-2. I feel like we need to have this tattooed at the end of this whole entire trial because it's like the most significant time frame, or I mean, part of the text stream. And his PowerPoint presentation were presented to the jury. Remember that whole presentation, that long presentation that Burgess and then Welcher shared? Well, now he made a PowerPoint, and his is based off all the research and on Welcher's and Burgess's reports. And they pretty much tag team on that, right? Burgess did all the research. Welcher put his together on his research. We heard all about that last week and the week before, just so everyone's clear. We already know what text stream is for the most part. I don't think we really needed that little, explanation. But of course, he explains the text stream events are points in time, not a time span, though, not an average. And that's important. It's actually a moment, and then it includes 5 seconds before and 5 seconds after that trigger point. So I thought of it like a sandwich. The trigger would be the meat, and then the two buns are like the 5 seconds before and after. That's how I thought of it. And the part we care about is in the middle. That's what we care about the most. That's the most important part here. But he's trying to make sure we know it's not a range. It's not a time frame. Meaning when Welcher said the trigger started at one point, which was 12:31:38, and then ended at 12:31:43, that's not accurate. The recording lasts that long, but an event can go on beyond that time. For example, if Karen gunned the pedal of her car, that's a trigger. And then it would record the 5 seconds before and the 5 seconds after the event of gunning her car. But she could have stopped her car 10 seconds later or 10 minutes later, and we would not know because the system only records 5 seconds before and after. That's important. There's another important event that we did know happened and at the exact time, and that was the phone lock. And that was recorded at 12:32:09. Important parts, right? And this is what he's going to be focusing on in this next part.
If we were to calculate the window between the trigger event or the text stream event and a lock event on John O'Keefe's phone, you analyzed both, correct? Or you reviewed both?
I agree with Dr. Angelique. Sorry, I hope it's okay that I'm saying Dr. Angelique and not your last name with it, but he was the first person to explain all of this in a way that made sense. It was technical and professional, but he was able to extrapolate that information and give it to a layperson with great clarity. And I agree. That's what helped me understand it all.
Correct?
Correct.
Would you calculate from the point of the trigger,
Oops,
would you
sorry.
calculate from 12:31:38, that point in time, I'm using the tip of my pen to represent the point, at 12:31:38, or would you calculate it from 12:31:43?
Customarily, when we're doing any analysis, we're referencing everything off of the trigger. That's the normal way. Everything in the aperture reports was referenced off of the end of the event. So
Of the recording event.
Of the recording event.
Not the trigger.
Correct. And I didn't correct that. I just went with that convention for all of the analysis I did.
But you noted it, correct?
Correct.
And you noted that that would be 5 seconds inaccurate. I'll withdraw it. I'll ask it a different way. What would be the effect of timing if you were to start at the trigger event, 12:31:38, versus timing the event if you were to start at 12:31:43?
There'd be approximately 5-second difference in every subsequent calculation.
And if, in fact, there was a lock event, which you reviewed, at 12:32:09, how long would the actual window be from the trigger event to 12:32:09?
It would be larger by 5 seconds, approximately.
So it would actually be 31 seconds, correct? Did I do my math right?
You did.
I know this can be a little bit confusing. It's a little bit dry. I think if we were going over today's trial testimony, we would have a lot more to talk about. But this is important. He explained it was customary to calculate everything off of the trigger time. That's normal. Everything in the aperture reports, though, references the end of the recording event as where to calculate everything. And this goes to the method they used. Remember, he's been hired to examine in his field of accident reconstruction, his expertise, if this is done correctly. But he didn't do any corrections, even though he realized, you know what? I don't know why they're using the end of the event to calculate this. But he came here to check everything the way that they did it. And right away, he took note because it was not the usual way in their field to calculate these times in these events. It would already be 5 seconds off. And the effect on timing, if you use the wrong portion, if you use the ending of that recording, then all of your calculations are going forward 5 seconds. They're going to be 5 seconds off, depending on how those timeframes are aligned. So that's important because now that lock event could occur at a different time. It would put it in a different time frame. Does that make sense? But I think the most interesting and problematic part about Burgess's reports from January versus the one in May is that when this witness was comparing them, he realized that Burgess changed his clock alignment, but not just his alignment, the way he did it, his methodology. He changed the entire way he was calculating it. So it's not a normal way to conduct this kind of calculation. His new report included a range. That's why I was telling you range instead of a fixed point in time. So now there were 3 scenarios where the phone lock could happen before the trigger event or the alleged collision, which again fits the Commonwealth's narrative. It's kind of like when someone says they got to move the numbers around. I'm sure you've heard that before. So I was understanding everything. I was like, wow, that's interesting. Like, why would they do that? Let's listen.
Yes.
Thank you. Back to my question. Was there any circumstance, based on your review, that if the tech stream event occurred at 12:31:38, that there was any circumstance that the lock event occurred before that trigger event?
There was not.
I think that's all I was trying to get there. He's going to explain this with an entire PowerPoint. He's going to show you everything. He's going to make it very clear. He also is going to make it clear he never added any new data. He just organized existing information. And if you don't remember how confusing some of the PowerPoint data has been, it didn't make your brain feel like it was going to explode. This one will make it feel a lot better because there was a lot going on in that previous PowerPoint when it came to Burgess and Dr. Welcher, especially Dr. Welcher. So I don't know if that was a tactic to throw the jury off because it was so confusing, or if he just happened to be a little bit unorganized in the way that he created a visual aid. I don't know. But Disorgra's last name might only be a few letters away from spelling disorganized. Okay, I make jokes, but his PowerPoint definitely wasn't disorganized. So let's look at it.
Did you create a PowerPoint for clarity's sake? in
The closed captioning thinks that a page that flips is applause.
March of 2025.
Yes,
Did you provide that to us?
I did.
What was the purpose of creating the PowerPoint?
The purpose of the PowerPoint was really to take a bunch of different data elements that were kind of placed throughout Mr. Burgess's report and Dr. Welcher's report in PowerPoint and compile them into a single source, a single table, essentially, to show as clearly as possible what the conclusions would be if we look at the data as a whole.
When you created that PowerPoint presentation, did you create it with the intention of providing it to the defense, which would then be provided to the Commonwealth?
Yes.
Are you aware of whether or not that was disclosed to the Commonwealth as part of the normal discovery process?
No.
So the answer is no, the answer is no.
Following your presentation of the PowerPoint to us, at some point did you receive from Mr. Burgess an amended report, an amended PowerPoint?
I received an amended PowerPoint by Mr. Burgess, not from him, though, from you.
Fair enough, fair enough. Did that report, or did that PowerPoint, however you want to put it, markedly, was it any different than his January 2025 report?
Yes.
Did you note any conclusions? Did you note the conclusions that he came to in January 2025? Going back to the original report?
Yes.
Did you note conclusions and opinions that he came to in May of 2025?
Yes.
Were those two things different?
Sustained.
Were the conclusions, not his opinions, were his conclusions different?
Sustained.
Was there any difference in the two reports?
There was.
Tell me the differences.
In the first report, Mr. Burgess did some of the calculations that are necessary to correct or adjust the times based on certain approaches, but never went through the final step of applying those calculations to the times and coming up with the final time. In the supplemental report, he then essentially took that analysis to the end. He approached it in a new way, a different way than he had previously laid out in the first report, but then he also took it all the way to the end by applying those calculations to the times.
Interesting, right? I was like, why would he do that? It's kind of weird. It's kind of interesting. Now here's the PowerPoint. Now, remember, we are going to have to see some of Dr. Welcher's PowerPoint, by the way, but just make sure you realize this is not his PowerPoint. What he's going to do is make little notes on it and then a couple new slides, and we'll see that.
Mr. DeSogra, can you still see with the lights off sufficient to see what's on the screen and
Lacey, I totally forgot. I had a freaking solo cup I was going to bring in here tonight. Darn it.
what's in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recognize what's on the screen?
Yes.
What is that?
That is the title page of the PowerPoint that I prepared.
And what is how would you describe the PowerPoint?
So this PowerPoint is largely identical to the first PowerPoint I prepared in that it seeks to take all of the different approaches between the initial Burgess report, the supplemental Burgess report, and Dr. Welcher's report, lay out all of those approaches in one kind of coherent fashion so we can look at what conclusions we can draw from all of that data.
With course permission, can we go to slide 2?
Yes. Mr. Jackson, you can just use this PowerPoint. Within
Okay, remember this PowerPoint? There it is. He is adding what's in the little box at the bottom, so all those little green dashes, and the word after in the other box.
evidence, you don't have to ask slide to slide.
Thank you, Your Honor. Taking a look at this next slide, what is this? What are we looking at?
This is a slide from Dr. Welcher's presentation that I was provided. Specifically, this is his slide number 33.
And what does it show?
This is where he introduces the first, acknowledgement that there's a difference between the time that Aperture calculated for the end of event 1162-2 and the lock event on Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone.
Is there anything in this slide that you disagree with, in Mr. Welcher's presentation that you disagree with? It's
Yes.
up on the...
I added the 2 green boxes and the text, the word after. That's not Dr. Welcher's. And I added that because it's stated here that the event occurred within 26 seconds. But if we do the math, and he actually does the math, he really means after. It means the phone lock event occurred 26 seconds after the end of the vehicle event as calculated.
Interesting. I keep saying interesting. He added the word after to the phone lock event on Welcher's slide. Now it is hard to see those blue numbers, But apparently, that was him doing the math on the bottom. No wonder we couldn't see it when he was being asked about it. He did the math and he said that it would be within, but it really should be 26 seconds after. Then, to illustrate this in a way that's very easy to understand, he takes one simple slide. I'm going to show it to you in a minute. And he shows this in a way that looks easy. Okay. I'm going to show you. There it is. So you can see here the Lexus event, which we're referring to as 1162.2, ends at 12:31:43. The phone lock, which he's going to be calling an interaction, John O'Keefe's interaction, is at 12:32:09, and he does the math. 12:32:09 minus 12:31:43 equals 26 seconds. And he says, let's call this 26-second difference John's interaction window. I'm going to let him explain it because he's the expert.
Can you tell us what this is?
This is more or less a repeat of what's on the first slide, but just shown with a little more focus. The first slide is a little busy. So
I'm sorry, Mr. Stoker, did you create this, or is this from Dr. Welcher's report?
I created everything on this slide apart from in the top right. That came from Dr. Welcher's slide 33.
Although
He's talking about that tiny little rectangle. That is a blown up portion of the math that we can hardly see. Dr. Welcher probably has to make a note the next time the dark blue on the black. Probably not a good idea. Not visually good at all.
created the slide, where's the data coming from for this slide?
All of the data on this slide and all of my subsequent slides comes from the aperture reports collectively, either Dr. Welcher's report or slides or Mr. Burgess's first and second reports.
What did their analysis reveal in terms of the exact time of the lock event for Mr. O'Keefe's phone?
So in their analysis, in Aperture's analysis, they report the Lexus event 1162.2 ends at 12:31:43, and they also report there's a phone lock at 12:32:09. So if we just simply take the difference in those two times, we get 26 seconds.
If you were to add the 5 seconds back to 12:31:38, which is the actual trigger event, what would you come up with?
31 seconds.
Okay. If you were to add those 5 seconds back, because remember that whole 5-second discrepancy, it would actually be 31 seconds of a difference. So an added amount of time. I hope everyone's following this because this was actually really important, I thought. I was like, okay, wow, this makes sense. Why didn't they account for these times? It skews all the data. Why did he do the math there but then not apply it? I'm confused. Forget about today's day in court. Let's just run through the data for today. That's really Friday. So let's keep listening because he's going to make another interesting point.
Next slide, please. What does this slide show us?
So this, here what I'm doing is I'm kind of laying out the bounds of what I mean in John's interaction window, which should make, we have a lot of numbers to go through here, and so this should give us a very easy metric for kind of determining whether we have an event before or after. So what I mean by that is when we calculate John's interaction window, if that number comes out and is positive, that means the phone interaction occurs after the end of the vehicle event. And if we calculate John's interaction window and that number becomes a negative value, then that means the phone interaction occurs before. So now we have just a convention we can use really quickly to say, is it positive or is it negative?
So he's making kind of a little easy to understand way where they can find out when John's phone locked. If they're going to do the math throughout this entire research and it is positive, then the phone interaction occurs after the alleged collision. But if they do the math and it's a negative, then the phone interaction occurred before. So it's kind of a way to test like whose conclusion comes out in this data. He also explained that it's better to use the trigger time, but since that's not what Burgess and Welcher did, he's looking at it the way that they calculated it. But he said, as long as you're consistent and you don't flip-flop, it's okay to use the endpoint of the recording. In all original methods, the phone lock occurs after the vehicle trigger. Just remember that because, again, I thought that was important. He's going to keep repeating all of this over and over again about where did this data come from? Where did this data come from? Aperture. Because Jackson doesn't want the jury to forget that all of this came from the experts that were just there saying that this collision occurred. It's not something that Disagra has fabricated, not at all. He actually is just showcasing their data in an easy to understand manner and then analyzing it and showing it to us. And that's what he's going to be doing going forward. And I explained positive, phone lock happens after the alleged collision, negative, it happened before. And all the original calculations, like I said, the phone lock occurs after the trigger event. That means John would have had locked his phone after allegedly being hit by the vehicle. There was also that 3-second delay. Remember the 3-second delay? Because we're going to be talking about the 3-second delay. He's going to critique Burgess's 3-second key on delay. That's what he's going to call it. This was something I thought was troubling to me. It was mentioned in his report, in Burgess's report, but also not applied. So just, I know it's a lot. Somebody said every time I say interesting, take a shot. I say interesting a lot because it is interesting to me.
Did Mr. Burgess make any adjustments from his original report to his subsequent report in May of 2025?
Yes.
Let's go to slide 6, please. Tell me about this slide.
Yeah. So this is the first adjustment we're going to talk about. And this one comes from Mr. Burgess's original report. And to summarize this adjustment, this is a key on timing adjustment, and we're going to show that the key on, the actual turning of the vehicle on, occurs about 3 seconds before that time gets registered in the infotainment. So the time we see is basically stale by 3 seconds.
We're all familiar with how computers turn on. When you say key on, do you mean a physical key, or could it be the push button to turn the car on?
In this case, it's a button. I refer to key on because generally that event is considered the key on in vehicle parlance, regardless of whether there's a physical key or it's a push button.
So those 3 seconds mean what? What's the difference between pushing that button and the 3 seconds later that you just described from Juris?
It means that when we're trying to use the timestamps that were recovered from the infotainment system that show when the vehicle was keyed on or turned on, that the vehicle was actually or likely turned on 3 seconds before that.
This was very important to me. Burgess spent so long explaining this as though he discovered something new, but this was actually an anomaly in the newly purchased Lexus that they bought for this experiment, because they can't test Karen's Lexus. You might have wondered why all along, like, why haven't they just been testing it on her actual car? That would be so easy. Well, that's because the state troopers tore her car apart. They took out the black box. They took all the components out. They ripped it apart to analyze it in the very beginning, and they didn't preserve it correctly. And they can't put it back together like that. And that's why they had to purchase an entirely new vehicle. But the problem turns out to be this vehicle in particular has this weird 3-second delay. Who knows why? Was it tampered with? I don't know. But it seems like Burgess talks about this delay, but he doesn't actually put it into his calculations, which is very confusing. It's so confusing, but I hope we can figure it out by listening to this witness, because he seems to be able to break it down.
Do you know where the 3-second conclusion came from in Mr. Burgess's report?
That came from the testing that Aperture conducted with the Exemplar Lexus that they purchased.
Was there anything in the report that indicated
Laura.
testing, this type of exact testing on Miss Reed's actual Lexus?
No.
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not all Lexuses, at least of this make and model and year, would have the exact same 3-second delay, or could that be different?
It could be different in their testing. In their testing, they only tested one Exemplar vehicle. So I think there was a solid foundation that the Exemplar that was used exhibited this 3-second delay. It was a very close match in terms of part numbers and software versions to Ms. Reed's Lexus. But without any kind of testing of, let's say, a second vehicle, a second Exemplar, we wouldn't know. We wouldn't have any basis to say it must be 3. We could test a second vehicle and it could be 5. So we say, well, there's a delay, but it varies vehicle to vehicle. They could have tested a second vehicle and found it's also 3, and then you start to build some confidence that maybe it is 3 across every vehicle. But with only testing one and not testing the subject vehicle, it is difficult to say with absolute certainty it would be 3 seconds.
See, this 3-second delay came from the original January report. The 3-second delay is not usual. This man's tested thousands of Toyotas and Lexuses. And they didn't have this other vehicle to test against this Exemplar Lexus. I almost call it Texas Lexus. To me, I immediately was like, reasonable doubt. They don't have Karen's Lexus to test it on. And what he was essentially saying is that Burgess and Welcher did not do enough testing to know. The best practice would have been to analyze this whole data set with and without that 3-second offset. But Burgess didn't use the 3 seconds. Even though he talked about the 3 seconds, when you push the key start, there's this 3-second delay before the system actually comes on. But usually in normal cars or in like regular cars, Disorder was saying you push it and it automatically comes on. So why wouldn't you just use the 3-second delay in this unique situation throughout your entire presentation? That was kind of the argument.
Sustained as to that question.
I'll rephrase it.
Strike the answer.
Did he indicate in his report
Thank
the
you, Cuff, for
reason
gifting 5
that
memberships.
he did not apply the 3-second correction?
He did not.
When you do apply the 3-second correction, what do you come up with as it relates to the 26 seconds from the end of the recording?
So the positive 26-second window, if we only apply the 3-second key on, grows to positive 29 seconds.
If you applied the same 3 seconds to the trigger event time, now what does the gap?
That gap would grow to a positive 34 seconds.
So you see, if you add the seconds, it gets further and further away from the key lock, which wouldn't be in their favor.
Between the trigger event and what?
The phone lock.
I was going to say interesting. I'm not, but I did. But what he's saying is you should run the scenario regardless to make sure it's not an anomaly. So Disorga compiled a 30 scenario matrix. I was like, what? And he used all these combinations of Burgess and Welcher's clock offsets. You're going to see it because he's going to put it up on the screen. 25 out of 30 show that the phone lock occurs after the event. 2 out of 30 happened at the same time. 3 out of 30 show that the phone lock occurs before. So there's a lot of different scenarios. You're like, reasonable doubt because there's way too much going on. To me, whenever I see way too much, I'm like, this isn't making sense. This isn't making sense. I don't get it.
What are we looking at here?
This is the summary then of that table, kind of a verbal summary of the giant 30-line table now. And if we look at all of the possibilities from all of the aperture reports collectively, then we can draw some pretty straightforward conclusions. 25 of those 30 possibilities result in interaction with the O'Keefe phone after the end of event 1162-2. Looking at all the possibilities, 2 of the 30 result in interaction where it's simultaneous. That's the zeros, the present in both tables. And then looking at all 30, 3 of the 30 result in interaction with the phone before the end of event 1162-2.
Sorry, my head was in the way.
Do you have an opinion as to which of these particular offsets that you've described, these 30 possibilities, should be applied in this case?
No.
Why is that?
Each of the approaches have their own individual strengths, and each of them have their own individual weaknesses. And there is not really any published literature, any research, or any testing done that I'm aware of that would suggest one really stands head and shoulders above another one of the methods. So I think the most fair way to present it is to look at, again, if we combine everything together, then we can draw some conclusions like this in terms of how many of the total result in one outcome or another.
Marie said, do we know manual lock? Yes. The phone records what you do, and he used his finger to click the lock button. I'm not sure if everyone is aware of this. Anna said, but you have to turn your friendship gifting on so you can receive memberships. Okay, cool. That's so cool. Thank you so much. So John had his own phone. This is in front of 34 Fairview. So that's one of the biggest points of contention is whether this so-called trigger event happened before or after. So that's what he's trying to correlate right now. And he said, using all the methods, like even if you combine them all, you're going to see more likeliness and less likely. And he just showed that on the screen. So he confirmed that there were more times, even with all the data that they both did, Burgess and Welcher, where the phone locks after. And I think I just said there were how many? Phone locked after. There was 2, I think, that were exactly at the same time, and then 3 that happened before. Does that make sense? So he's going to explain this a little more. Don't worry, he's going to explain this, but he's also going to explain that here. I'm going to have him explain it. Like, why am I explaining it? There's going to be more questions about it.
Is every data point that we're looking at and that you've been talking about, are these all drawn directly from Aperture's reports?
That's correct. I have not proposed any methods for aligning the clocks myself. All of the methods that comprise these 30 are from the Aperture reports themselves.
Based on your analysis of the Aperture, or your review of the Aperture analysis, is there any ability to say to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that the text stream event occurred after the last physical interaction with John O'Keefe's phone?
Yes, there would be three out of the 30 possibilities would result in that.
Okay, wait, I'm so confused. Am I saying the name wrong? Is it Anna? Anna. Spell it out for me. You're here all the time. I got to get it right. Every time I never look at the chat afterward. He's saying that there are more possibilities of it locking after. So usually when you do, remember the whole scientific method and we're like, oh, oh, look, so many outcomes. Why did this happen? You usually go with the one that there's more of, right? So in Jackson's final questions, this witness is going to emphasize that, of course, text stream triggers do not mean that a collision occurred. We've heard that. No evidence of a crash was ever recorded in Karen Reed's Lexus throughout the whole history. And that's because of the EDR. That's the black box. And that's also the infotainment logs, the timing offsets. No event supports the prosecution's theory, can't speak, of an impact. But remember, these systems don't necessarily showcase that. But his testimony was all about the data. He did not do any new analysis, only interpretations of the Commonwealth's own witnesses, which I think is really important. So I wanted to highlight that. Anna.
Following your analysis
Not
of
Anna.
The totality of the possible scenarios,
I finally got it.
did you come to a conclusion that the vast majority, let me rephrase that, did you come to any conclusion about the numbers as they relate to the positive interactions versus the negative? And when I say positive versus negative, I'm talking about the phraseology that you used. John's phone interaction being in the positive side versus John's phone interaction being in the negative side.
Yes.
And what were those?
Of the 30 possibilities, 25 of them, it's a positive. John's interaction window is positive for 25 of them.
And only 3 were negative?
Correct. Only 3 of the 30 were negative.
Okay, we can take that slide down. Is there a data recorder on the Toyota SUV that we've been talking about, that 2021 Toyota SUV 570, that's designed to record impact?
Yes.
What is that? What is that mechanism?
That would be the airbag control module.
The ACM?
ACM.
Did you look at that?
I was provided a copy of the download from the ACM.
What did the data recorder indicate, if anything, related to any impact on January 29th, 2022?
There were no recorded events whatsoever on the ACM.
Did the vehicle control history record whether there was any history of a
What was
collision
it? Dever,
on that car?
Dever,
Ever?
Devar, Devere? I'm responding to Marie. Speaking of pronouncing names right, wait till you see today's trial. If you know, you know. Oh, no. I wish we could go right into it.
What does the vehicle control history record specifically?
It records a lot of operational parameters about the vehicle. What I mean by that is it records things like what the driver is doing, for example, steering wheel angle, accelerator pedal position, whether the brake is being pressed. It also records what the vehicle is doing, for example, speed, or the engine RPM, or the accelerations of it.
Does the text stream data event indicate that there's a, and I'm talking about very specifically the text stream data, does that indicate whether or not there's a collision in the car?
No, we know that. So I was kind of I'm gonna wrap it up because I want to get to some of the other arguments. I tried to pace this better this time. Tell me if you liked this a little bit faster. Don't know. Had me explaining things a lot more. But that was it for the defense. And overall, this witness, I felt like he put forth a very clear explanation. This was very technical. It's not always clear cut. And the Commonwealth surely didn't make it that clear, right? But I think what he showed, in my opinion, when I was listening to this, is that this reverse situation alone cannot prove a crime or a collision occurred. There were no telltale collision signatures in the data, and the phone timing could be off. This, I think, bolstered Jackson's argument to the judge that merely showing the SUV went backward is not the same as proving it ran somebody over. So I feel like this was a effort to undermine the prosecution's case, data point by data point, one by one. But Brennan was ready to challenge all this, and he did not do it lightly. He was loud, he was aggressive, argumentative. And honestly, to me, I didn't think it was a good look, but I did watch this 3 or 4 times. And as I watched it more, I was like, you know what? He wasn't that bad. But the thing was, I feel like he was really trying to be combative when Disogra was not fighting him. He was really good under pressure. It's like, why fight him? He wasn't arguing with you.
Okay.
This
Mr.
one too
Jackson,
times
how
speed?
much longer? I'm just trying to figure out.
I'm wrapping it up, Judge.
Okay.
It's not going to be long. A few more questions.
Oh, one more
I'm
question
not
from
curbing
Jackson.
you in
Sorry.
any way, we just-
Understand. Respectfully, it won't be very much longer. You reviewed the text stream data, otherwise known as the triggers, for the entirety of Miss Reed's vehicle, correct?
Yes.
How many trigger events did you find in the life of the car?
Not counting 1162-2.
Let's stop there. Right.
Prior to 1162-2, there were 19 prior events.
And 19 total events, correct?
Correct.
And how many collisions were clocked by any recorder on that car?
None of the events were triggered by collision.
I think that's all I wanted to point out. Okay, Brennan, here we come.
May I proceed?
By the way, he's talking so low that I put the closed captioning. I can't really account for his low volume, unfortunately, because if I try turning it up, it's going to be super loud and then it's going to be bad.
Please.
Good morning, sir. Sir, are you trying to offer an opinion suggesting that Miss Reed's Lexus never hit John O'Keefe on January 29, 2022?
I'll allow it. Is that what you're doing?
Is that your opinion?
No, sir.
Are you offering an opinion that Miss Reed's Lexus never got in a collision before?
The way I stated it was none of the prior events were triggered by a collision.
What I'm asking you, are you offering an opinion that Miss Reed's Lexus never got into a collision before January 29, 2022, or on that day?
No.
So when you were talking about collisions to the jury, you weren't making any suggestion that that Lexus was not in a collision, are you?
I think you threw a double negative in there. Can you just clarify what you meant? Yeah.
You were not suggesting to this jury that Miss Reed's Lexus did not ever get in a collision before.
No.
You're just saying that there's no data on the text string to suggest a collision.
Specifically, none of the events were triggered by a collision. That's
Text stream data can be triggered by a number of different things other than a collision. Isn't that true?
correct.
And in fact, when you talk about text stream data, you know that text stream data does not record a collision. You know that.
Yeah.
A collision is not one of the triggers. That's correct.
Right. So when you were saying it wasn't triggered by a collision, it's never going to be triggered by a collision ever on text stream data.
Not the collision in and of itself, correct?
Right. Right. So there's other things that will trigger text stream data,
Correct.
like sudden acceleration.
The only
I felt like this was a point for the Commonwealth.
acceleration trigger that I'm aware of on TextStream is if there's a large acceleration during what Lexus calls a PCS, or a pre-collision safety event.
I was like, what? Isn't that a win? It will trigger if there's acceleration during what Lexus calls a PCS, or a pre-collision safety event. I would have been arguing, did you hear that, jury? A pre-collision safety event. What do you think that means? Lexus thought the collision was about to occur. That's what I would have argued, but I didn't hear that. So DeSalgra's telling the jury, and well, he's saying that he's not telling the jury that Karen never hit John O'Keefe or that a collision didn't happen. He's just clarifying that you can't tell with this system because it doesn't indicate a collision. That's not what it's for. And of course, we already know this, but Brennan, he talked about all the things that the text stream can tell you. And then he said, what about acceleration? The pedal, remember the 30 to 74%? Remember that whole thing? And then he's going to press him about something else. He's going to press him about not being a phone expert. Because remember, he's going to be trying to almost like show that he doesn't know what he's talking about this whole time. What he's going to be doing is talking about that. Because remember, we have a phone lock. Brennan's job right now is to make this witness look bad, his witnesses look good. He's going to be like, you don't know what you're talking about, do you? He wants to undermine his testimony big time. He has to.
My apologies. The conclusion Mr. Burgess had is that he believed there was missing information from the
Okay. You cannot even hear him. I'm going to go back for a second because I forgot something. It's right here.
subspecialties, isn't there?
In general?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, are cell phones, is that a subspecialty in digital?
I really felt like there was a hostile witness today. Do you think we can define the officer today as a hostile witness? Don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But, ooh, she got under my skin.
Forensics?
Yes.
Is that something you're a specialist in?
No.
iPhones. Are you a specialist in iPhones?
No.
Have you ever taken any specific training on mobile forensics?
No.
Have you ever written any papers on mobile forensics?
No.
Have you ever promoted yourself of having any type of subspecialty as an expert in mobile forensics?
Never.
In any of your continuing education, and you have a vast amount, have you ever taken any classes or seminars in mobile forensics?
No.
See all those no's? That's good. That's good for the Commonwealth. Those no's. That's going to sound bad to the jury. The jury might not know all the processes to this, that maybe he doesn't need to be an expert in mobile phone devices, iPhones, and things like that. But he's never taken classes or written papers about mobile forensics or phone to car syncing. And I'm saying that could look bad. But this witness was retained to look over the other witness's data. Let's not forget that. And that's what he did. He confirmed that he didn't collect any original data or run tests on Karen's Lexus because that's not what he was hired to do. But the Commonwealth's going to make it look like that was a bad thing. Oh, you didn't do any of your own research? I think it's right here, actually.
Have you ever taken any class or study about variances between infotainment systems and mobile forensics?
Classes? No.
Have you ever attended any seminars on variances relative to mobile forensics?
No.
Have you ever testified about variances in mobile forensics before you testified in this court today?
No.
Have you ever published anything to do with variances in mobile forensics?
No.
In this case, you had an opportunity to review a number of reports from Dr. Judd Welcher, yes?
Yes.
And Mr. Shannon Burgess?
Correct.
In reviewing those reports, you've offered your opinions and analysis. Did you ever engage in actually any efforts or study in this case to obtain data?
Could you maybe clarify what specifically you're asking?
Yes. Did you ever yourself, not watch someone else do it, did you ever download or obtain data in this case?
No.
Did you ever test Miss Reed's car?
No.
Did you ever get an exemplar vehicle to run any tests?
I did not.
Did you ever do any actual testing in this case?
No.
And so your role is to look at other people's work and offer opinions and criticisms, basically.
And provide some clarity to the work, but generally, yes.
Your job is to criticize other people's work. He's like, no, it's to provide clarity. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing inherently wrong with any of this. But Brennan's hoping that the jury's going to think, well, the Commonwealth, their experts did way more. He used the word criticize on purpose. You're criticizing other people's work. He's like, no, I'm clarifying it. I'd say he's making sense of it. and also, sure, perhaps critiquing their methods, peer review, if you will. That the fans are on in court, by the way, so you're not going to be even able to hear Brennan's questions, and I hated that. But Brennan actually tried to criticize DeSogra because he did not create a formal report. Instead, he just threw up some slides, a presentation. But I think there was a bombshell here. I don't know if everyone caught this, and that's why I love going through this with all of you. And I think this bombshell was kind of in the Commonwealth's favor. Remember the whole missing chip thing? Recall Burgess? Supposedly, he found this extra memory chip, this card, that no one saw before. Well, DeSogra submitted this affidavit opposing additional chip off. Remember, the chip off was removing the chips in the data recovery. That was Burgess. He went ahead and said, oh, I should do more research on this because he was matching the memory capacity. Remember, Miss Gaffney did the removal. And then Burgess was like, wait a minute, we need to do additional recovery. There's this extra chip on here. But he was confused. Remember, he confused megabytes and megabits. So the numbers weren't matching in his opinion. And he submitted this paper. And DeSogra looked at it and he was like, no, you've got this all wrong. That missing data doesn't exist because you are wrong on your math. But here's the thing. After all, he ended up finding more data on this chip that no one knew was there. So was Burgess confused? Or maybe he was just making this up so he could access the chip again. I don't know. But I feel like he got a lucky break because this SD card did actually have significance. It turned out to be the source of the infotainment time data, which was essential to their timeline analysis. Yeah, I kind of missed that in Burgess's testimony because I think we were too busy knowing that he lied about his education, which means the defense did a really good job of burying something important in all that chatter, right? But this witness explained that the now crucial SD card that wasn't initially listed in the testing protocol was a surprise. And then Burgess shifted all of his focus there. But the reason why DeSogra didn't object to any of that is because he didn't understand why it was significant. Nobody did. But Brennan's going to point out, but Burgess did. And I was like, oh gosh, don't go that far. I think he just got lucky, but we'll see.
The power log on information that actually has date and time. That's critical in an
You have to read the closed captioning. You're not going to be able to hear Brennan.
accident reconstruction, isn't it?
In some accident reconstructions, in some, there's no debate about when a vehicle was on or off, but if there is, then yes.
Not just on and off. The power log on and off gives you the date and the time that you can match with the texturing data. Correct?
Brennan is saying, isn't it important that we have this time and date text stream data? And he's like, well, usually you do, but in Karen's car, it didn't have timestamps. It had a running clock. Remember that?
Yes, it does.
As you know, texturing data itself doesn't have date and time.
It can, this vehicle didn't. It can, but this vehicle did not.
This had a running time instead. Like
That's
a stopwatch.
correct.
So this data that was not found
He's saying, so this data that was not found
during the initial process
during the initial process was critical.
I don't think prior to the process anyone knew that this particular Lexus infotainment system stored those key on and key off times.
Right, the only person that found this out was Shannon Burgess.
He found it in the process, but I don't think anybody knew in advance of this case. There was nothing out there about it. So to my knowledge, this is the first time that this specific data has ever been released into the wild.
But it was on the board there. If someone knew what to look for or got creative, they could maybe find it.
Brennan's like, but it was on the board. It was on the board that they were taking apart. It was left there and somebody just didn't look for it or get creative enough and they didn't find it.
Yes, more so to your if got creative, because I don't think anyone would have been able to have the foreknowledge that there would have definitely been that.
Shannon Burgess did.
Shannon Burgess did. I was like, okay. But this SD card had timestamps instead of the running clock. And that was really important. Burgess discovered it, maybe on accident, but he discovered it nonetheless. And perhaps it helped him craft his narrative better. Maybe really it didn't do much in the sense of coming to a correct conclusion that a collision actually occurred, but it was able to be made to look that way maybe. I'm not saying either way. I'm just saying, they're making him look very special, that he was so creative, that he took a different approach. But maybe he was just grasping at straws. He's like, I wonder what that little thing does. We don't know. But he happened to uncover something that nobody would have thought of, and it was significant. And then Brennan wants to go over what he refers to as DeSogra's new PowerPoint. Why is he saying that? I touched on this before. All these days are running together. I don't know if it did it in this video. He's going to want to make it look like everything his witnesses did was okay. Everything the defense made a big deal about, like changing things, that wasn't wrong. Because if they create a new report and now this man creates a new report, then everybody's doing it. It's normal. But what he doesn't understand, the jury doesn't know, we know, that he changed his report because Burgess changed his. We're privy to that and all the motions and everything that happened behind the scenes, but the jury doesn't know that.
I want to ask you questions and go through your PowerPoint. And I want to ask you your specific opinions and how you arrived at certain claims that you've made.
Sure.
Okay? If we could put up Mr. DeSogra's new PowerPoint, 52525. You've made a modification to your PowerPoint.
Yes.
You've made an amendment to your PowerPoint.
Yes.
So there was something that happened, you received new information or new data, and you updated or changed your PowerPoint.
I did.
And that's an appropriate thing to do when you receive new information, isn't it?
Yes.
If you have new data, you don't want to leave it behind. You want to make the best presentation with the best data you can.
I'd want my presentation of the data to be as accurate as possible, so I included all the data.
And you would expect that from any expert, wouldn't you? If they received new information or analyzed new data and it was important, it would be an appropriate best practice to update the PowerPoint or information they're providing, wouldn't it?
Objection.
I'm going to allow that.
I don't know if I would tell other experts what their best practices are. I would say, generally as experts, we do work that our clients ask us to do. So if we're asked to do it, we do it. If our clients say, hey, don't do that, then we don't do it.
Well, you like the phrase best practice on direct, so I'm just wondering if I can borrow that phrase.
Sustain.
So you see, now it's looking like it's not that uncommon to update your report. Lots of objections in this cross, lots of sustains this entire time, right? The back and forth. But Brennan is making statements. He's not questioning the witness. He's just kind of throwing jabs at him at this point. But the jury still heard what he said. And he gets this witness to admit that he didn't look at all the data or even speak to Dr. Welcher. But to be fair, he doesn't have to. He's looking at the output. It's what they showed the jury. So if it's good enough to show the jury, isn't that all he should have to analyze? But it sounds bad. The court went to lunch. When they come back, they're going to be talking about that 3-second delay again. 3-second delay. So we're going to have to listen to it because I want to make sure we're wrapping up really nicely, putting a bow around all this, and then going on to tomorrow. But I'm going to just tell you that Brennan argues that by adding the 3 seconds, you're almost like double dipping. You're putting too much on. You're kind of skewing it even more. So let's just listen to it. We only have a few more to go. It was a shorter day.
You're not aware that Mr. Burgess talks about that timestamp in his reports?
He mentions it in the second report to say that he doesn't think Dr. Welcher should have aligned it on that.
That is exactly not what he said. Where in the report,
Sustain.
where in his report
That's
does he say
exactly
that Dr.
not
Welcher
what he
should not have
said.
relied?
That's exactly not what he said. Hold on. Let me go back to that. That was really good.
Yes.
You're not aware that Mr. Burgess talks about that timestamp in his reports?
He mentions it in the second report to say that he doesn't think Dr. Welcher should have aligned it on that.
That is exactly not what he said. Where in the report?
That's where I got the screenshot, I think, for today's thumbnail. That is exactly not what he said. It's like, sir, come again?
Sustain.
Where in his report does he say that Dr. Welcher should not have relied on 154?
Thank you, Brennan, for getting closer to the mic.
Where does it say that in his report? I have it here. If you can give me the page, we will take a look at it.
Sir, he doesn't have his, what were we calling it? His support laptop. He doesn't have his emotional support laptop like Dr. Welcher. He can't just flip somewhere and find it for you.
I don't know the page, and I'm paraphrasing. By no means am I conveying that as I'm directly quoting it, but I remember that as something I read in there.
Well, I was careful in your affidavit not to paraphrase you, right?
Oh my gosh, he keeps making statements. He's got to stop doing that.
Sustain.
So when you just made
Well,
that assumption or that
I
suggestion,
was careful not to paraphrase you. Okay, calm down.
question characterizing Dr. Welcher's state of mind or thought process, is there anywhere in the report you can cite or show me where Dr. Welcher said that?
No.
Okay. When you read Mr. Burgess's report and you learned that he and others obtained an exemplar vehicle and did this testing, you have no other independent information to suggest that the power on, power off event in 3-second delay is inaccurate, do you?
I just want to make sure I heard you. Did you say accurate or inaccurate?
Inaccurate. I'm sorry, the fan's on. I'm trying to
I
show.
know, that's the only reason I couldn't hear that. So can you state it one more time?
I'll rephrase it. When you reviewed Mr. Burgess's report and reviewed the information about his exemplar testing regarding the 3-second difference between turning on the car and the infotainment system going on, you have no other information that you looked at or studied that changes that analysis, do you?
No.
Now, when you are suggesting, could we shrink that and zoom on the right side, please? When you are suggesting that 3 seconds should be added to the time because of that 3-second gap, do you think maybe you made a mistake in considering it that way?
No.
Oh.
He's like, no, I didn't make a mistake. Your people made the mistakes, and I'm having to clarify all their mistakes. Okay, only a few more. He's confident, though. He's confident, and that's good.
Now, when you added 3 seconds, you were trying to, in addition to the infotainment data, you were adding on the 3-second delay that now you're saying might not even be accurate. Is that fair to say?
I don't think I've ever said it's not accurate.
Oh my gosh, I forgot to tell y'all something. Did you guys see ads in this live stream? I forgot to tell you, I don't know how to turn that off. So if you saw it, let me know.
I said that in the exemplar testing, they documented this behavior of a 3-second delay. And that needs to be accounted for if you're going to correct the timestamps. However, the caveat I put on that was only with one exemplar vehicle. So it could be that this behavior, the 3 seconds, is unique to the exemplar and would not apply to other similar vehicles. And so that's why I did either nothing or the 3, because there's nothing to support something in between.
So you disagree that the clock stamp on the infotainment module begins the run. You believe that there's potentially 3 seconds before when the ignition goes on that should be added to that time.
I know from testing other Toyota systems that the key on timer happens almost at the identical time that the vehicle is turned on. That timer starts running basically immediately.
That is so important. He says that you have to account for those 3 seconds or don't. And he did both just to show you both outcomes. He's confident that the car starts and then the timer starts at the same time. The whole point he's trying to make is that they didn't test other Lexuses. They only bought one. And I was thinking, why couldn't they just get other ones? But then I realized, okay, it's got to be the same make, model, close enough. They only tested their vehicle that they're bragging about just for this experiment. But he's making the point that this might have been an anomaly. He's done thousands and thousands of these, and they start at the same time. There's not this delay. And if there is a delay, like how do we know on another car or Karen's wouldn't have been a 4-second delay? He also talks about relying on this call comparison chart that I'm going to pull up for a minute. It's from Burgess. These are the timestamps, the offsets between the infotainment system and John O'Keefe's phone. But he does admit he never verified whether those timestamps came from Karen Reed's phone or another source. And then it was revealed that the vehicle was actually powered off during the first 5 listed calls. So Brennan is going to argue that these were sync logs, not live call logs. And that means comparing their time to the phone timestamps is invalid. I thought this was a good argument, but I also thought that the Soaker did a good job countering it.
Now, let's turn to slide 9. As part of your charts, could you enlarge the left, please? As part of your charts, you took this chalk from Attorney Burgess's report, and you made some assumptions about this, didn't you?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I applied the numbers in his 3rd column to the times. So, I mean, that's the extent of the analysis.
When you looked at the first 5 columns,
Ew,
1:14,
no.
13 a.m., 4:38, 16 a.m., 4:42:06 a.m., 4:45, 12 a.m., and 5:04, 28 a.m. You said on direct examination, oh boy.
Oh boy.
You said on
Said, oh,
direct
boy.
examination that was matching infotainment to iPhone.
That's what it says on the chart, so
Okay.
that's probably what I said. I don't
Well,
remember specifically, but that's what the
Is
chart
that-
says.
Is that your opinion, that those first 5 columns are matching infotainment to iPhone?
It's not his opinion. It's what your witness put on the chart.
The chart says infotainment call timestamp in column 1. It says O'Keefe iPhone call timestamps in column 2, and then it says offset. So I'm taking that at face value.
You're basing your later charts on the predicate that these numbers, the first 5 columns, are infotainment compared to John O'Keefe's iPhone, aren't you?
Based on the chart, yes.
You didn't do any study on your own to determine the genesis of that information, did you?
I'm aware of the fact that these calls, the 5 you mentioned, were placed when the vehicle was in a keyed off state. I'm aware of that.
What I asked you specifically is, on those 5 columns, did you do any research or study to determine whether or not it was infotainment matches to John O'Keefe's iPhone or some other phone matches to John O'Keefe's iPhone? Did you do any independent study about that?
No.
Because in your ultimate conclusions and all the charts you've given to the jury and shown the jury, it relies on the conclusion that the first 5 columns are a comparison between infotainment clock and John O'Keefe's iPhone. Isn't that fair to say?
That's exactly how the chart presents it, and that's how I present it.
Did you know that at 1:14:13 a.m. the defendant's Lexus was turned off?
Yes.
Did you know at 4:38:16 a.m. that the defendant's Lexus was turned off?
Yes.
And did you know for 4:42:06, 4:45:12, 5:04:28, did you know that her Lexus was turned off?
Yes.
Do you know that when you make phone calls, or by the way, do you know on those different times, the first 5 times, where that information is generated from?
Which column?
Left column, 1:14:13, all the way down to 5:04:28. Those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. Do you know where that information came from?
It came from the SD card from the infotainment.
Do you know where the genesis, the beginning, the source of that information? That matters, right? The source?
It would.
It would. Do you know where it came from?
The assumption, the assumption is if the vehicle has a timestamp and the phone wasn't connected, it would have been synchronized after the fact. But that wasn't tested.
That's his point. He's saying, look, well, Brennan says, look, you didn't do any tests. And he's like, look, sir, this was your witness's data, your witness's research. Aperture was the one that didn't test these things, but then they still presented them. And Brennan says, blaming Aperture is not going to get you out of answering these questions. He said that, listen.
Aperture didn't do any of that testing in their work to look at the behavior of a timestamp in the infotainment when a phone is synchronized after the fact.
Blaming Aperture is not going to get you out of answering the question. Did you know?
Objection. He's like, blaming Aperture is not going to get you out of answering questions. By the way, everyone turn memberships on. You have to actually, somebody explain it one more time in the comments so that everyone knows how to do it. Cuff has purchased memberships and you can get them for free if you turn on gifting memberships. You're allowed to receive them. I hope everyone receives them because I think there was a caveat that you don't get your money back if you gift. That's weird. Also, I am so sorry if there's any ads in the stream. When I came on for the very first time, I've never seen this before, it only gave me 2 options. Yes, I want ads put in from YouTube to decide, and they can put as many as they want, or I can choose an interval. And I was like, I don't want either one, but I only had 2 choices and I had to get on my live. So I am sorry that that's happening. If you're getting a interruptive ad, not something I intended. But of course, that was objected to. And now for the 3-point turn and what they've been calling the 154 timestamp again. So Brennan, he's about to walk this witness through the GPS data, showing this 3-point turn. This is going to be like the last little thing we go over, and then I'll take some questions. I also favorited some of your comments. I'm going to go back over them. We'll do that for like the last 5 minutes. But we're going to go over this right now. Remember the 3-point turn. It began at 12:23:59, I believe, and ended at 12:24:07. So let's listen to what he has to say about this part. I think it's this part.
Okay. Let's start with 192B, please. If you could open that up so we could see it a little better. when you look at the data he actually broke down, do you agree that instead of at the end of the three-point turn event as timestamp 154, that actually is at the beginning of the three-point turn? Do you agree with that?
I don't know if the points are numbered on here, so I can't tell which point he's referencing as 154.
Do you see the green circle?
Yes.
Do you see the black line?
Yes.
Does that orient you to the direction the car was traveling?
That appears to be what he's trying to convey with his chart.
And then the yellow is facing a different direction, towards Fairview, correct?
It is.
And do you see the green square rectangle?
Yes.
You think that correlates to the green circle?
Pausing really quick to say, I don't know if this will help. Don't quote me on this, but I have been on somebody else's stream and they were having the same problem where everyone was turning on gifted memberships, but it wasn't working and they had to go out of their app. And don't quote me, I believe they said they had to be on their desktop or something. I don't know, but just try at least coming out, going back, like coming out of the whole app and coming back and making sure it's on. That sucks. I will make sure it's right. So don't worry. At the very end, when I go back home, I'll make sure it's right.
That seems to be what this graph implies.
And it notes that...
So ask it differently, Mr. Brennan.
Does that heading note the start of the three-point turn of O'Keefe's phone is 12:23:59?
I'm going to allow it.
That's what Mr. Burgess states in the report.
And do you have any information to suggest that's not spot-on accurate?
No, I didn't do an independent analysis of the three-point turn maneuver.
And then the heading of the change, end of three-point turn to O'Keefe's home, 12:24:07. Do you have any information to suggest that's not spot-on accurate?
I did not analyze the three-point turn maneuver.
And so when you look at that and break down 154, did you determine or make an analysis that 154, that was generally accepted, because there is variances between items, when you break it down with more specificity, 154 is actually earlier than the three-point turn conclusion? Did you consider that?
I'm going to allow that, yeah.
I'm not sure I understand the question, if you don't mind.
You mentioned Dr. Welch's report said it relied on 154 as a timestamp for the end of the three-point turn.
Yes.
Based on Mr. Burgess's May 8th report, and based on the data which you don't contest, you now agree that 154 was not the end of that three-point turn. It was at the beginning.
Based on how Mr. Burgess presents it, I didn't do an independent analysis. So I'm not on one side with Mr. Burgess or one side with Dr. Welcher. They present independent methods.
Are you suggesting in any way it's inaccurate? Are you suggesting it is in any way inaccurate?
I'm going to allow that.
I don't have any opinions as to the individual accuracy of the methods selected by either Mr. Burgess or Dr. Welcher.
Do you have any information you'd like to add or weigh in on to dispute the accuracy of those times?
Sustained.
I know that was a lot. I was talking a little bit because it looks like people are not receiving their gifted memberships. They've already been paid for, and there are a few left. Someone said they can see it on their iPad. Other people said they're trying to click on it and they can't. Look in your email. There might be even a message there that you got one. I'm going to make sure that YouTube knows what was happening so that I can fix it if something goes wrong. So if somebody paid for gifted memberships to gift and they didn't work, don't worry. I will take care of it and make sure you either get refunded or people get their gifted memberships, but make sure gifted memberships are turned on. But this was important. I know I was talking through it and things were happening. This was all about the three-point turn. So DeSogra earlier assumed that the timestamp at 12:24:02 was the end of the three-point turn. But apparently the way Burgess showed it, it was actually in the beginning or in the midway. So that was important because Brendan's trying to show, well, look, you're not even looking at the calculations correct. And he's like, listen, I'm not looking at anything except what Burgess is showing. And if he's showing it confusing or he's not being specific about it, then that's really not on me. That's what he was trying to say. And then also, there was another part. There was this 8-second range. Let me go back. Oh gosh, look at this pause. Look at this pause. I'm so sorry about that bad pause. Let's go back here. I want you to hear something. It's a little more. He's going to talk about the fact that he doesn't really dispute this.
Actual data on a map, doesn't he?
He does.
Okay. Exhibit 192A.
He's going to be showing him the exhibit again, and you're going to see the map.
Okay. Let's start with 192B, please. If you could open that up so we could see it a little better. When you look at the data he actually broke down, do you agree that instead of at the end of the three-point turn event,
I'm showing it again.
Timestamp 154, that actually is at the beginning of the three-point turn? Do you agree with that?
I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, 3-point turn, Lexus text stream, 11:62:1 ends at 12:23:38. Heading change, start of 3-point turn, O'Keefe iPhone, 12:23:59. Heading change, end of 3-point turn, 12:24:07. Okay, so what's confusing?
I don't know if the points are numbered on here, so I can't tell which point he's referencing as 154.
Do you see the green circle?
Yes.
Do you see the black line?
Yes.
Yeah, his comparisons, his graph or map is so confusing. And that's why let me move the closed captioning. Okay, where? The black lines don't go anywhere. I can see it now what he's saying, but he's like, you see the black line? He's like, I don't know which one came first.
That orients you to the direction the car was traveling?
That appears to be what he's trying to convey with this
It's like, that's how the car was traveling. Like, how do I know where it's coming from? If it's coming from the top or the bottom?
chart.
And then the yellow is facing a different direction, towards Fairview, correct?
It is.
And do you see the green square rectangle?
Yes.
You think that correlates to the green circle?
That seems to be what this graph implies.
And it notes that...
So ask it differently, Mr. Brennan.
Does that heading note the start of the three-point turn of O'Keefe's phone is 12:23:59?
I'm going to allow it.
That's what Mr. Burgess states in the report.
And do you have any information to suggest that's not spot-on accurate?
No,
He can't tell whether it's accurate because it's data that was created by somebody else. He's just looking at it.
didn't do an independent analysis of the three-point turn maneuver.
And then the heading of the change, end of three-point turn to O'Keefe's home, 12:24:07. Do you have any information to suggest that's not spot-on accurate?
I did not analyze the three-point turn maneuver.
And so when you look at that and break down 154, did you determine or make an analysis that 154, that was generally accepted, because there is variances between items, when you break it down with more specificity, 154 is actually earlier than the three-point turn conclusion. Did you consider that?
I'm going to allow that, yeah.
I'm not trying to understand the question, if you don't mind.
You mentioned Dr. Welch's report said it relied on 154 as a timestamp for the end of the three-point turn.
Yes.
Based on Mr. Burgess's May's report and based on the data, which you don't contest, you now agree that 154 was not the end of that three-point turn. It was at the beginning.
Based on how Mr. Burgess presents it, I didn't do an independent analysis. So I'm not on one side with Mr. Burgess or one side with Dr. Welcher. They present independent methods.
Are you suggesting in any way it's inaccurate? Are you suggesting it is in any way inaccurate?
I'm going to allow that.
I don't have any opinions as to the individual accuracy of the methods selected by either Mr. Burgess or Dr. Welcher.
Do you have any information you'd like to add or weigh in on to dispute the accuracy of those times?
Sustained.
And let's turn to the previous exhibit so we can actually see the data that's broken down.
We're almost done. And then I will
The
look at what's going on in the chat as
154
well.
timestamp, if you go to the left, please. Do you see that right above the green line?
Yes.
12:23:58. You see that?
Yes.
And then the green goes to the orange, and that's an 8-second difference, isn't it?
Yes.
And when you looked at this, you considered that this was a more detailed study of that timestamp by Mr. Burgess, right?
More detailed is, yes, that's correct.
And do you know why he did a more detailed analysis of this? Why it wasn't in the original PowerPoint?
No, I don't.
Well, you said that variances are generally accepted in the community, right?
Yes.
But then you wrote a report suggesting numbers and additions, and you submitted that report as part of the basis of your testimony, right?
I only submitted a PowerPoint. I have no report.
PowerPoint. And after you submitted the PowerPoint, isn't it fair to say Mr. Burgess then analyzed this data to be more specific after you introduced your PowerPoint?
Yes.
So can you guess why he went through a more detailed analysis?
No.
Why did he go through? Maybe for his own narrative to be true? I don't know. But okay, fine. This 8-second range, start to the end of the turn, it's a conservative estimate. This witness agreed. He can't say either way whether it's accurate, inaccurate, but it's conservative in that it's an estimate, right, of when these things happened, but it's their research. But at least at the end, he acknowledges the text stream does not prove or disprove a collision. There was no text stream data showing a collision on January 29th, and the system also missed one at 5:07. Remember the fender bender, the nick, the bump, what people are calling it? So I thought that was important to note.
Sustain. Strike it.
I think it's a
In
little,
the final exhibit,
it's a little further down. Hang on.
I have no further questions.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Sorry.
Would not reflect a collision, correct?
That's not what I said. I don't have an opinion.
And you know that there can be collisions or touching between vehicle, and it's not going to appear on the text stream data. You know that, right?
It's possible.
It's possible. Did you know that the defendant's vehicle at 5:07 a.m. on January 29, 2022 bumped into a different car?
Yes.
Do you see that reflected on the text stream data?
I'm thinking back to when I reviewed the raw text stream data, and I don't remember seeing an event from that.
I can't really
I
hear
don't
you.
remember seeing an event from that time in the text stream data.
Well, you don't remember seeing it. It's not there, is it?
I don't think it is. I don't remember seeing it. I don't think there's one.
You're not.
I was going to finish and say I don't have all of the events committed to memory. There's
You're-
19 of them.
I'm sorry.
There's 19 events. I don't have them all committed to memory.
You're not testifying or offering an opinion that there was no collision with this car that night, are you?
No.
Because if you were implying that or suggesting that or insinuating that, that would be misleading, wouldn't it?
It's not.
Sustained.
It's not misleading. The data doesn't show that. And it's like they want it both ways. Oh, wait. No, it bumped a car, but it didn't show that. But did it bump the car? Yes. So that means if it bumped the car and didn't show it, then it bumped the car and showed the trigger and didn't. Which one is which? But there's also a redirect. I know we're almost done. We have like 4 more clips. But don't you like spending time with me? I did you get it? Did you guys get it figured out? I don't know yet. But I am going a little over the time I wanted to be here, but that's okay. There's a lot to go over.
Did you create this table?
No.
Was this table, I don't know if you call it cut and paste or if there's some better engineering term for it, was it basically pulled from Mr. Burgess's report?
It was. It was a
Did you type-
It was a screenshot.
Thank you, screenshot. Did you type a single word on this?
I did not. I added a green box.
Put a green box around it?
Yes.
You didn't type anything on this.
I did not.
You were asked a ton of questions just a few minutes ago about whether or not the column on the left and the center column
Oh my
were
gosh.
reflective of an
Sorry about the ads. I didn't mean to do that.
infotainment timestamp versus an iPhone to iPhone timestamp, correct?
That's right.
Mr. Brennan asked you a bunch of questions about that left column being an iPhone timestamp, at least the top 5 rows of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows of it. Remember that?
Yes.
Read the name that Mr. Burgess labeled that column.
Infotainment call timestamps.
So what,
Right. He's looking at what he's naming it as.
as an expert, what did you presume he, as an expert, was presuming?
Objection.
Sustained.
What did you presume that meant to you, just to you?
Call timestamps from the infotainment.
So if anything is wrong with your analysis, would it be based on Mr. Burgess being wrong in his analysis?
Objection.
Exactly. They already heard it. If it's wrong, it's because they were wrong. Yeah. But I think this part was my favorite.
I think that's.
And so when you
No.
don't actually do the work yourself, and you just presume, or you
Wait,
guess,
did I miss it? Oh, did I miss it? Did I miss it? No, I think it's right after this. I think Brennan comes back on. He's saying, oh, you're just guessing.
you could get it wrong, couldn't
You
you?
can't hardly hear him. He's like, you're just guessing. So you can get it wrong, couldn't you?
If I had guessed, yes, but I didn't guess. I used the data in the reports and I referenced the testing that Aperture did. So I did not make a guess.
1 through 5, and you telling me right now, to a reasonable degree of data certainty,
Are you telling me right now, to a reasonable degree of certainty,
If that information is based on the input,
that information is based on the input
you're saying?
Don't know.
clock?
You don't know. But if you actually did the analysis yourself rather than just Monday morning quarterbacking somebody.
He's calling him a Monday morning quarterback.
Objection.
So I'm going to strike it, ask it differently, Mr.
If you
Brennan.
actually did the analysis yourself, you wouldn't have to make a presumption that you're
If you did the analysis yourself, you wouldn't have to make a presumption.
wrong, correct?
I don't think the analysis was possible in this case because the testing wasn't done in this case.
Yeah, the testing wasn't done correctly. And this was my favorite part. I thought it was right there, but it was in the end. It was right here.
You were asked a question about what might have happened 4 seconds later, 12:32:16. Remember you were asked?
No, it's not right here. I lost it. No. Y'all, I lost it.
After the end of the vehicle event, every single time, instead of it was 25 for 30 in the
I'm so
original
sad I
analysis.
lost it.
The
I'm so sad.
Of that timestamp by Mr.
Wait, it has to be like right here.
Specifically, you were asked about your
Here it is.
expertise regarding mobile data devices. Mobile devices and their data, correct?
Yes.
And were you being truthful when you indicated that you were not an expert in
Yes.
that field? Were you being truthful when you indicated that you have a certain expertise in EDR data?
Yes.
Were you being truthful when you indicated that you did review Mr. Burgess's data and Mr. Welcher's data as reflected in their reports and PowerPoints?
Yes.
Were you being truthful about your credentials?
Yes.
Have you ever lied about your credentials?
No.
You hold a bachelor's degree
Yes.
and you hold a master's degree.
I do.
You ever lied to anybody about that?
No.
That was well played. He's like, you were honest, right? You were truthful. It's just to insinuate that no matter what Brennan wants to argue, his witness, Burgess, did all those fudging around with his degrees and this and that. So how can we trust any of his data that's changed over time and has been complicated and other witnesses don't understand and they're in the engineering field? But in the end, and I kind of already played this, there was one more moment where Brennan came back and he wanted him to confirm one last thing, which is only fair to play. Let's see if it's here. You can't even hear Brennan.
In the VCH system,
You can't even hear Brennan. I hate that. Oops.
With the court's permission, may we have slide 10 of the PowerPoint of,
Okay.
and that is, we talked a lot
I
about
lost it
PowerPoints
again.
of Mr.
I lost it
DeSilver's
again.
PowerPoint.
Basically, he just, because this is the end. Basically, he just went over the same thing again. So we already kind of heard it, but he's like, you're not saying there was never a crash. And then there was this part.
Can you highlight the table on the left, Mr. Wolf? Thank you. Did you create this table?
Yeah, we already went over this, remember? He's like,
Was
no,
this
I didn't
table-
create any of this. Sorry, I'm a mess at the end. I need to go to bed. I need to go to bed. I'm trying to remember all these little parts. Oh my. But seriously, this was like crazy. I felt like, what do you think? I feel like some of this,
Monday morning quarterbacking somebody's report.
Objection.
yeah, the Monday morning quarterback was there.
The phone. When you look at this data, could you go to the top, please?
I don't feel like it was Monday morning quarterback. I think Brennan had to do what he had to do in order to make, everything look good. He had to take his best shot.
12, which is in the 10-second window, and 12:32:16. Do you know what John O'Keefe was doing in that 4-second period?
no,
Do you know if he was walking?
no,
Do you know if he was crawling?
no,
Do you know if he was falling?
no.
You don't know.
I do not know.
Thank you. Ed, briefly, go.
I thought that was a good way to end it. You can't hear Brennan, which is why I just stopped playing them, because you can't hear him. He basically was like, do you know what John was doing at this time or this time at this time? And he's like, no, I don't know what happened to John O'Keefe. He can't tell you, right? So all in all, it's more than I thought we would get to, because it was a lot. But after all that, and I'm not going to play this right now, there was a battle. There was a battle over Proctor's text messages. Oh my gosh, some of those came in this morning. I didn't like how they came in. I didn't think they really had the biggest impact as they did last time, if you've watched that trial. But at least the judge let them in. I mean, that was the right thing to do. Now I just want to answer some of y'all's questions and get to some of the other things that were happening. And thank you about my bun. This is actually a sleepy tie. So when you straighten your hair and you want it to stay overnight, you put it in this and then it just stays. Okay. Everyone's going, people are leaving. Um, oh, okay, Steph. We'll see you later. I know I got to get my little one to bed too. Okay. I saved a few of the comments, so I want to make sure to play those. Jen said, I'm torn. Oh gosh, I have to make these right. Hold on. I forgot to do these in the beginning. But currently sit at not enough to convict. Susie said, hello. To all the law baddies, I hope you are all well. Our fearless leader, Kimber, is our law bun baddie today. I am. Someone, Cuff said, you're almost at 20K subs. I know. Thank you. Anna said, it makes me question even more about the investigation tactics. Cuff gifted 5 memberships. I hope that we're able to figure out how that was received and not received. And how do you say her name? Elena? Elena? Elena. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so bad at names. Good evening, law baddies. I'll try to get it right next time. Natural said, I feel like John O'Keefe's arm injuries isn't from a vehicle. And Makeup with Nana says, thank you for doing these lives. Makes me laugh as I read the comments. Don't forget to opt in for gifted memberships. That's what everyone was trying to explain. I've never done this before. I've never known that there was ads in lives. I apologize. YouTube just reviewed my channel for monetization. I am new to a live channel, so I apologize if that was really annoying. I thought it would be when I was reading it. I was like, what? I've never seen a live ad. Apologies. I will fix that. Let's see what Marie said. Statistically, I don't think entire police forces set up people to cover up taking out one of their own for any reason. I'm not sure. I don't know if I would say they don't do cover ups, but I would say there is such a thing as the wall of blue, as they say. Like, I'm probably not saying it right. But no, there's definitely been corruption within police departments for sure. I don't know if this necessarily started out as a cover up, is a cover up. I think that in the most reasonable way I can think about it, I would assume this is a lot of mistakes and a lot of cover your own asses that happened. And it coincided with a confusing and suspicious death. That's what I think happened. It was like there's a lot of moving parts. And I don't think, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I don't think there was this big collusion of a bunch of people. I think, if anything, there are a few people that could have done something wrong that's not Karen. Like, let's just, for hypothetical speaking, right? Let's just say the Karen thing, since we just don't know. Could there be this other thing that happened and they're trying to cover their butts? So they're making it hard to investigate this case properly. That could 100% happen. As a matter of fact, go look up the Sandra Birchmore case. If you go to my other channel, I did an entire deep dive on it, and it happens to coincide with this case. And in that case, an officer staged a self exit of a pregnant girl that he had been grooming since she was a child because he got her pregnant. So I don't want to get into deep with that, but some of the same players in this case are on that case. So I don't know if I can confidently say that cops don't cover things up and don't try to cover their own butts. And in the process of that covering their own butt situation, could they have made it harder to investigate this case? Sure. Or could there just been a lot of ego at play in the beginning, Trooper Proctor, and him trying to make something look worse than it was, and it made things worse than they had to be? That could have been. Could have been as simple as her accidentally causing a death, but him having an ego and wanting to be, investigating a murder. And so I 100% have heard of people planting evidence. It's 100% a thing. It doesn't always happen, but can it happen? Yes, especially in a small town, especially on a small force. Not that they were small, but especially in a town where a lot of people are close to the police, and this situation is close to the police, right? So I don't know. I have to hear the defense's case. I did not like what I saw today. I'm swayed either way, back and forth. I'm swayed. And I think it's okay because we haven't heard everything. I'm never going to know what happened. I'm never going to know. Maybe Karen doesn't know. Maybe no one will ever know, right? But let's just listen to everything and come back tomorrow and hear what happened today. And if I ever get to the point where I can do these the same day, I will try my hardest. Thank you so much for becoming a law baddie. And I think the shirts are going to be taken down. I'm not just saying that for like scarcity tactics. We're going to take it down. If you haven't gotten one and you like that old style, the style that we created on a whim that my husband did. He was so cute. I really wanted to support him because he did that, and I bought one too. I have to buy my own merch. I don't get them for free either because we do it through a company. But I appreciate anyone that did buy it, and I'm just buying it for the memory. We're gonna take it down and we're gonna make a really good one. Not that that one's not good because I kind of like that one. So I don't know. Give me feedback in the comments if you already got it or you like it and you think we should just keep that one. And maybe I'll just put both of them and you can choose which one we should keep up. But I do want to thank you so much for being here. I'm trying to keep these to an hour to an hour and a half, and it's been almost two. So I'm going to go and say goodnight to everyone. And thank you so much for being here with me today. I will see you tomorrow for another recap and breakdown. I will see you later.